And that's interesting because it's not just, in a way, what Mrs. De La Vega Foster was saying, it's not just any more basic manufacturing that's going on in Mexico. I mean, this is very, very advanced processes and manufacturing. And also what you mentioned about this growing educational relationship between the U.S. and Mexico, I think is also a key issue. And what I would be interested to hear from you is, how do you see that, Mr. Hunt? Because you've been a very long-time supporter of education and the development of our youth to take the lead in this kind of high-level economic activity. How do you see that developing in the last several years here?
I'd probably answer that in education in a very broad sense, including education of our business leaders, our population, our political leaders, as well as those that we call students. The Borderplex Alliance is a privately led effort that is led by members of the business community from southern New Mexico, El Paso, and Juárez. And we work to brand and to market and to make more competitive our region. As a couple of examples there that would be more specific is with Congressman O'Rourke and Congressman Hurd, who represents a part of El Paso County as well as a part of San Antonio. The Borderplex Alliance has been bringing congressional staffers and U.S. congressmen, and this is a continuing program. I think we've had about 100 staffers, a few congressmen, but we're looking forward to this fall to having quite a few more congressmen. Bringing them in, and the anecdotal experience is we come in with this big perception gap that I mentioned, and I think the last two congressmen, one both Republican, one from Arkansas and one from Louisiana, who had a record of having this misperception of the border, and when they left, that record changed, and the pronouncements, both verbal and written communications after that, were consistent with the new reality that they bought into once they saw the border. So that's an ongoing program that gets back to my comments about us taking ownership for trying to narrow and zero out this gap between perception and reality. On a workforce development standpoint, the Borderplex Alliance in Juárez is where we really started our first program. We've got about a third of the Maquilas there as participants and funders of trying to match their workforce needs with the educational leaders and institutions in Juárez. And we're looking to take some what we've actually learned on the Mexican side and bring it to the U.S. side. So there's a much more focus by the business community that this is regional, that the vision here is that we need to erase the border. It is an impairment to our competitiveness on a worldwide basis. Nobody's going to pay for anymore for our widget that gets interfered with in border wait times or other gaps that are friction that is created by the political division. So we're here to erase those, and we think over time that can happen, and we're very focused on that.
This is a very rich conversation, and we're seeing a lot of themes, and the broadening of themes. And as you mentioned, it's not just educational exchanges for university or even for high school or something like that. And what Mrs. De La Vega Foster said earlier about not just actual physical bridges, but more metaphorical bridges, bridges of community and bridges of education that Mr. Hunt is mentioning. And Mrs. De La Vega Foster, you do a lot of work and are very active in the tri-state area, in New Mexico, West Texas, and Texas in general, as well as Chihuahua. And how do you see, and what are your thoughts with respect to not only kind of the educational exchanges that the Chief of Mission was describing earlier, but this kind of broader educational mission regionally? Here on the border, we're kind of not just on the edge of the US-Mexico border, but also on the border of our respective states, New Mexico, Texas, and Chihuahua. So how do we, and how have you seen the engagement of places like Albuquerque, Santa Fe, Chihuahua City, Austin, with respect to this kind of humanization and this bridge building process of our binational community here?
Well, I think definitely with the interchange of ideas and working together, the best tool we can provide our young people is education. It's the best tool that we can give people to move forward and to have social mobility. But one thing that needs to be addressed, especially on the Mexican side, although I'm convinced education is the first thing for social mobility, is we need to address corruption. And that needs to be addressed, and we need to enforce the rule of law. And I say that within the region because it's important to understand, so what happened in the US? The US wasn't born with rule of law and accountability. No, it evolved over time, and it took a lot of effort. It took a lot of courageous people coming forward and wanting to change things. And I think to be in a partnership as equals, we need to have the same rules. So I think that's something that we really need to work on. And the universities and the educational sector, I think it's a very good place to start, to try and push these ideas forward about accountability and rule of law.
Senadora, what are your thoughts with respect to this from your view in Mexico City and with the Senate Foreign Relations Committee in particular? How can we work with your legislative body? How can we work together to foster education, not just in a narrow sense, but also in a broad sense? And how can we work with the Mexican Congress to deal with issues of civic mindedness, or of try to decrease any kind of issues of corruption or crime that might be influencing negatively our communities here?
Creo que pueden ser dos temas que confluyen, pero también que pueden separarse de manera muy práctica o hasta pragmática. Un tema en el que sí hay un déficit ahora en México es el modelo educativo. Vemos cómo países en Asia han desarrollado pues nuevas formas de aprendizaje, nuevas técnicas, nuevos conocimientos, y que eso no ha llegado a México. Lo que empezamos a ver, y que qué bueno que se desarrollaron iniciativas educativas entre Estados Unidos y México, es que los lugares que eran ocupados antes por mexicanos, o incluso me atrevería a decir por latinos, empezaron a ser ocupados por asiáticos. Y que sí tiene una razón por ejemplo, hablemos de matemáticas o hablemos de ciencias. Ahí es donde México sí tenemos una deuda con nuestros niños, en darles las mismas oportunidades que en un mundo globalizado van a necesitar para poder competir. Son herramientas que van a ser necesarias, las tenga o no México. Me acuerdo de una campaña política hace 15 años, hubo un candidato que hablaba, como una gran promesa de campaña, ofrecer inglés y computación, y la gente se rió de esta promesa. Fue un tema de burla. Hoy cualquiera pensaríamos que el inglés y computación es como para el diario, o sea, esperaríamos que un modelo educativo básicamente lo tuviera. Me parece que en ese sentido es donde México tiene una deuda para poder tener este acceso al sistema educativo norteamericano, y también para poder ofrecer una alternativa para los estudiantes estadounidenses. Un tema que tiene que ver con mucho más opciones de idioma. Sí necesitamos aprender más inglés en México, es mucho más común, por muchísimas razones, encontrar quien habla español en Estados Unidos que encontrar en México quien habla inglés, y necesitamos esa herramienta. Otra también, desarrollar un modelo educativo de mayor calidad. Hicimos una reforma educativa, pero es una reforma que en eso es un poco pues autocrítica, pero me parece que nadie espera que seamos políticamente correctos. Hicimos una reforma más que educativa, fue una reforma a la administración del sistema educativo. O sea, una reforma a cómo funciona el sindicato, cómo funcionan los profesores, pero no una reforma a los contenidos, que es parte de lo que directamente beneficia o perjudica a los niños o a los jóvenes. Me parece también que México y Estados Unidos, insisto, tenemos que vernos como pares, y no nos vemos como pares. Probablemente un poco más sí, en esta especie de sociedad transfronteriza que se ha construido y que tiene un diálogo cotidiano, que no ve la frontera más que como un trámite de todos los días, no como los grandes muros que físicamente están, o los grandes temas de seguridad que se perciben desde las capitales. En la medida en que podamos construir una sociedad que se vea como iguales y con la capacidad de construir una agenda común, ahí sin duda se insertará también la educativa, que la agenda educativa tendrá que hablar de presente, pero también de futuro. Países donde se intercambian estudiantes, por ejemplo, lo podemos ver con la Unión Europea, es muy común que los jóvenes hablen no uno o dos, sino varios idiomas. Es muy común ver a familias donde ya no se habla de nacionalidades, y es muy común ver que las personas puedan moverse sin grandes barreras a esa movilidad humana que pudiera ser muy natural y que claramente no hemos logrado construirla.
Now, a question that comes to mind as I listen to you speak, and also brings to mind a lot of the work that the Mexican embassy does in all of Mexico, and not just Mexico City, is a question about how can we really stimulate this kind of thirst or desire to really engage in the content of education that you described, not just a regulatory or administrative reform. And I'm very curious to hear your thoughts as well as your thoughts about what kind of programs or what kind of outreach or what kind of mindsets we might try to really promote. The U.S. Embassy in Mexico, in particular here in Juárez, the consulate has been a tremendous supporter not only of UTEP but of the region in general. I know that they do a lot of work with outreach and with the universities in Chihuahua and in Ciudad Juárez. What are your thoughts, and I'd like to hear your thoughts, what kind of things, practical things can we do to really see us como pares, or to really kind of think about how we can work together on this human element that really sustains this kind of economic framework that's pushing our countries closer and closer together.
Well, thank you for that, and I think we are doing a lot, and I think both governments would like to do a lot more, but it always comes back to money, doesn't it? And the Mexican economy has taken a hit with the drop in oil prices, and so budgets have taken a hit because of that on the Mexican side. And then all of you are intimately familiar with how Washington's budgeting goes. And so what we've been doing and what we're going to keep doing, and if there's anyone here who can help us do it, you're more than welcome, is we're going to keep reaching out to private sector partners. We've got some good ones in Televisa, Universia, the banking community in Mexico. We've signed an MOU. We're trying to promote internships with U.S. businesses to get more young Mexicans up to the United States. But we need to leverage those. We need those public-private partnerships like Mosaic, which is focused on the innovation side. And frankly, we need, if there are any Mexican or U.S. entrepreneurs in the room, we need your help to do this.